Well, hypersecretion disorder, the primary hypersecretion is that too much hormone being secreted by gland on its own. While the secondary hypersecretion is that gland is excessively stimulated by its tropic hormone. Now, we have the hyporesponsiveness disorder, which its definition is the target cell do not respond normally to hormone. We have also the hyperresponsiveness, which its definition is the excessive gland response to hormone. Control system involves the hypothalamus and pituitary. What is the hypothalamus and pituitary? So let's talk about the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland lies in a pocket of the sphenoid bone at the base of the brain, just below the brain area, which is known as the hypothalamus. The pituitary is connected to the hypothalamus by the infundibulum. The pituitary gland has two adjacent lobes, which is the anterior and the posterior pituitary. Here's the one. So the pituitary and hypothalamus hormone controls the nerve ending secretes neurohormones. It also blood picks up to neurohormones. We also have the pituitary stalk. We have the posterior pituitary. We have the neurohormones from the hypothalamus stimulates or inhibit the release of anterior pituitary hormones. We have the inflowing of blood, portal blood vessel, secretory cells, anterior pituitary, and we have the anterior pituitary hormone leave gland in the blood. So what are the relationship between the hypothalamus and pituitary? The axons of two cluster of hypothalamus neurons passes down the infundibulum and ends within the posterior pituitary. This is no important neural connection between the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. The capillaries at the base of the hypothalamus recombine to form the hypothalamo-pituitary portal vessel. The hypothalamo-pituitary portal vessel passes down the stalk which connects the hypothalamus and pituitary. This now enters the anterior pituitary where they drain into a second capillary bed, the anterior pituitary capillaries. This allows for a rapid response and limits the amount of hormones that must be synthesized to reach an effective blood concentration. The posterior pituitary hormones, there are two posterior pituitary hormones. We have the oxytocin, which stimulates the contraction of smooth muscle cells in breast. It stimulates also the contraction of uterine smooth muscle cells during labor. Vasopressin is that it acts on smooth muscle cells around blood vessel to cause muscle contraction. Acts within the kidney to decrease water excretion in the urine, and it's known as an antidiuretic hormone. The hormone moves. Now let's talk about the route of posterior pituitary hormones. The hormone moves down the axons to accumulate at the axon's terminal in the posterior pituitary. Neurotransmitters generates action potentials in the neurons. This now propagates to the axon terminals and triggers the release of the stored hormone. The hormones enter the posterior pituitary and is carried away by blood to the heart. The transport of the posterior pituitary hormones. Let's talk about the third ventricle in the left. It has hypothalamus, then it has the neurosecretory cell that secretes releasing hormone. Then it goes to the blood flow. Then hypophyseal portal vein, then it opens up to the anterior lobe of pituitary gland. Then we have the secretory cell of the anterior pituitary gland, which is in the middle of the line of the anterior lobe of pituitary gland. Then we have the capillary net. Then the blood flows carrying away anterior lobe. That's how it works. On the right side of the other hand of the third ventricle, we have the neurosecretory cell body. It goes to the nerve fibers. Then we have the posterior lobe of pituitary gland. We have the blood flow in capillary net. Then blood flow carrying away posterior lobe hormones. So about the anterior pituitary, we have the hypophysiotropic hormones. These are the hypothalamic hormones that regulates anterior pituitary function. Each of the hypophysiotropic hormones is the first in a 3-hormone sequence. We have the hypopituitary hormones controls the secretion of an anterior pituitary hormone, which controls the secretion of a hormone from some other endocrine gland. The last hormone then acts on its target cell. So, let's talk about the hormone secreted by the pituitary gland. We have the adrenocorticotropic hormone, which its target cell is the adrenal cortex, which its function is to stimulate secretion of cortisol and aldosterone by the adrenal cortex. We have also the antidiuretic hormones, which its target cell is the kidney tubules, which it stimulates the reabsorption of water by kidney, reducing the concentration of solute in the blood. We have the follicle-stimulating hormones. Its targets are the ovaries in females and testes in males, which its function is to stimulate egg production in females, stimulates sperm production in males. We have also the growth hormone, which its target is the muscle and the bones, which its function is to regulate development of muscle and bones. We have also the luteinizing hormones, which its target is the ovaries in female, testes in males, which its function is to stimulate the progesterone and estrogen production, initiates the ovulation in females, and in the males it stimulates the testosterone production. We have also the oxytocin, which its target cells are the mammary gland and uterine muscle, which its function is to initiate uterine contraction during childbirth, stimulates flow of milk from breast during lactation. Now we have also the prolactin, which is the PRL, which its target cells are the mammary gland, which it stimulates milk production in breast during lactation. We have also the thyroid-stimulating hormone, which its target cells is thyroid gland, which it regulates the secretion of the thyroid hormone, thyroxine and triiodothyronine. What is this? Now let's go with the transport of anterior pituitary hormones. We have the hypothalamus, which its function is the neurosecretory cell produce ADH and oxytocin. Then the neurosecretory cell produce releasing and release inhibiting hormones. Then it goes down to these hormones moves down to axon indines. Then these hormones are secreted into the portal system. So pituitary portal system, this is it. Then with appropriate ADH and oxytocin area are secreted from axon endocrine to the bloodstream. Each type of hypothalamic hormone either stimulates or inhibits production and secretion of an anterior pituitary hormone. The anterior pituitary secretes its hormones into the bloodstream. In anterior pituitary hormones secretes to the ovaries, testes, the bones and tissues, mammary glands, adrenal cortex, and thyroid. While in the posterior pituitary, it secretes to the mammary gland, oxytocin to smooth muscle in uterus, and the kidney in tubules. So, what are about the hypopituitary hormones? Similar to the anterior pituitary hormones with two differences. The axon of the hypothalamic neurons that secretes the hypopituitary hormones remains in the hypothalamus, ending in its median eminence. The hypopituitary hormones enter the capillaries in the median eminence of the hypothalamus that do not directly join the vein bloodstream, but empties into the hypothalamus-pituitary portal vessel, which carries them to the anterior pituitary. Now, what are the names and function of the hypopituitary hormones? We have the CRH, or ACTH, which stimulates the release of ACTH. We have the TRH, which it stimulates the release of TSH. We have the GRH, which stimulates the release of GH. GHIH, which inhibits the release of GH. GnRH, which stimulates the release of FSH and LH. And we have PIH, or the dopamines, which inhibit the release of prolactin. The effect of hypopituitary hormone on the anterior pituitary is that The corticotropin releasing hormone is that it increases the ACTH. The thyrotropin releasing hormone, it increases the TSH prolactin. Gonadotropin releasing hormone is that it increases the LH and FSH. The growth hormone releasing hormone, it increases the GH. While the somatostatin, it decreases the GH, while dopamine decreases the prolactin. The CRH ACTH cortisol sequence. Where do we start? Where? So let's start with the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus releases CRH, then it stimulates the ACTH release from anterior pituitary gland. Then it stimulates the adrenal cortex. Then it releases cortisols, which either inhibits the hypothalamus and inhibits the ACTH release from anterior pituitary gland. In the cortisol, it causes the metabolic and cardiovascular changes, which it relieves the stressful stimulus. Then it stimulates to the hypothalamus. That's the end of the hormones. Now let's go with the endocrine system. So let's go with the endocrine system, which their synthesis, action of thyroid hormones, and control of thyroid function. So, thyroid hormones. What are thyroid hormones? Basically, hormones that are produced by the thyroid gland, which have diverse effects throughout the human body. The thyroid gland produces two iodine-containing molecules of physiological importance, the thyroxine and triiodothyronine. Thyroxine is generally converted to triiodothyronine by enzyme known as dionysis in target cells. T4 is the major secretory product of the thyroid, and the total T4 concentration are higher in the blood. However, T3 is the major thyroid hormone. The thyroid gland is a bilobe structure that sits within the neck, straddling the trachea. The thyroid gland is composed of numerous follicles, each made up of an enclosed sphere of highly specialized cells surrounding a pore-containing protein-rich material called colloids. Synthesis of thyroid hormone. So, yeah, it's not clear. So the step 1 of the synthesis thyroid hormones is that synthesis begins with circulating iodide is co-transported with sodium ions across the follicular cell plasma membrane. Iodine cannot diffuse back into the interstitial fluid once it is in the cell. This is called iodide trapping. The next step is that the trapped negatively charged iodide ions diffuse down their electrical and concentrate gradient to the luminal border of the follicular cell. The colloid of the follicle containing large amount of protein called thyroglobulin or TG. The iodine that diffuses to the colloid is rapidly oxidized at the hormonal surface of the follicular cell to the iodine-free radical. The free radical are then attached to the phenolic rings of the tyrosine molecules within the amino acid structure of TG. Thyroid peroxidase is the enzyme responsible for oxidizing iodides and attaching them to the tyrosines and thyroglobulin in the colloid. Thyroglobulin and thyroid peroxidase are synthesized by follicular cells. Iodines cannot be added either of superposition on a given tyrosine within a thyroglobulin. Monoiodotyrosine or MIT, a tyrosine with one iodide attached, while diiodotyrosine is a tyrosine with two iodine attached. The step 4 is that phenolic ring of either a molecule of DIT or MIT are removed from the remainder of its tyrosine and is coupled with another DIT on the thyroglobulin molecule. Reaction mediated by thyroid peroxidase. If two DIT molecules are coupled, the results in tyrosine. If one DIT and one MIT are coupled, the result is T3. With thyroid hormone, then the next step is when thyroid hormone is needed in the blood, extension of the colloid facing membrane of the follicular cell engulf proportion of the colloid. with the iodine